stuff.
Hi, I'm Michelle Sterling for Friends of Science Society. For the past few days, all major TV news stations in Canada have been tweeting a clip of Green Party leader Elizabeth May bloviating about not leaving fossil fuel workers behind in the Green Party's proposed Mission Possible plan. I say bloviating because she offers no evidence to support any of her claims. And worse, the media and journalists whose mandate is to make sure we're not being fed fake news just let her go on and on. Ask the woman a few hard questions. Here's one for starters. Since the world runs almost entirely on fossil fuels, with wind and solar providing a tiny percentage of energy generation, why does she think oil and gas and oil sands workers would not be employed if pipelines to market were built? Ask Elizabeth May what wind turbines and solar panels are made from. Ask her. Ask her why oil and gas and coal workers and oil sands workers would not be employed when no renewables are possible without scads of oil, natural gas, coal, and oil sands. These are not tough questions, and they're not meant to embarrass the Green Party leader. But if Elizabeth May is making claims that are based on unicorns and fairy dust and planning to impose these on Canadian taxpayers, shouldn't we know if they're at all workable or not? And Ms. May claims the Green Party will not leave anyone behind. So ask her about her days in the Sierra Club as executive director from 1989 to 2006 and the Sierra Club's role in pushing for the Ontario Green Energy Act. Ask her about the $217,893 US grant from the Oak Foundation, a tar sands campaign funder, and it said it was to provide overall coordination of Canadian NGOs working on climate change in Canada to have greenhouse gas emissions classified as pollutants under the Canadian Environmental Protection Act, and to create and administer a climate change action fund. Ask her how big that fund was, or is. In Robert Lyman's report on the Ontario government's climate legacy, he documents the almost absolute destruction of the industrial heartland through that plan. With the current push for public policy to adopt green energy schemes, it's time to reflect on the Ontario experience. Ontario's disastrous electricity policy has been publicized and commented on extensively by many sources, so that's not news. But what is news is we can lay the blame squarely at the door of its climate policy motivation and perhaps remind people of how high the bill has been. $9 billion for poor contracting practices, $133 billion in global adjustment fees from 2015 to 2032, and at least 20% of which is related to renewables, $3.6 billion to build the smart grid and smart meters, up to $55 billion in deferred costs that will hit future taxpayers, and 75,000 lost industrial jobs. That's quite a tally for zero global environmental benefit. Most Canadians think the tar sands campaign is just about Alberta crying over collapsed international oil markets and coming up with conspiracy theories. I ask you to look at the players funded by the tar sands campaign and realize that it has attacked every part of the Canadian economy. And look who the consistent players are. 75,000 Ontarians were left behind by the Green Energy Act promoted by Elizabeth May's Sierra Club. That's pretty close to the 100,000 Albertans left behind by the NDP and Liberal climate policies. And look who spoke at the Sierra Club-sponsored 2010 Zombie Duck Rally. Upon Elizabeth May leaving the Sierra Club to run for the Green Party, board president of the Sierra Club, Louise Como, noted, "Elizabeth has led the club at the national level from its infancy to its enormously effective entity that it is today. Sierra Club is so effective that it also helped put 7,000 coal workers out of a job in Alberta and is responsible for the devastation of 30 coal industry communities here. The Sierra Club has been funded for millions of dollars by billionaires with vested interests in renewable to demarket coal, oil, gas, and oil sands. And now, Ms. May, in her new incarnation as Green Party leader, is promising more of the same in terms of unworkable green policies, yet claiming no worker will be left behind. Elizabeth May also claims that geothermal can become a big player in providing energy. But if you look at the global reality of geothermal, even in the US, the world's largest geothermal generation market, geothermal only provides 0.4% of the power generation. And what of wind and solar in the US? After 40 years and trillions of dollars spent on wind and solar, wind generates only 6.6% of US energy, and solar, thermal, and PV combined, just 1.6%. And that's in a country with far better solar and wind resources than Canada. Well, not to mention, it looks like Ms. May is leading Canadians down the garden path to a dead end, because the CEO of Iberdrola says the renewable sector is heading for an Enron-style endgame. Enron was a huge energy company in the US that collapsed into ashes due to a combination of fake holdings and off-the-books accounting. So Enron was also one of the main advocates for various cap-and-trade, carbon pricing, and renewable schemes that we see today. So back in the world of reality, oil, gas, coal, and oil sands grow in demand worldwide. But Canada just can't get these resources to market like our competitors can, and none of our competitor nations are trying to be climate leaders. They're all trying to get more of the market share. And one way to do that, of course, is for any of our competitors to fund environmental groups like the 100 international groups that participate in the tar sands campaign, to drive off investors, shake down banks and insurance companies, to block Canada from world markets, and to demoralize Canada's industrial workforce. If you want to know what Canada will look like after the Go Green environmental groups are done with our country, just look at Ontario, crippled, nearly bankrupt. Well, maybe that debacle wouldn't have happened if the media had been more critical, more questioning, more demanding of the facts, instead of fawning over eco-celebrities. We have many, many reports on these facts. But the media have mostly locked us, friends of science, out because an influential PR guy, who's an Al Gore acolyte, has successfully labeled us as deniers. So, you read our reports, make up your mind for yourself. Instead of an eco-activist making up things, we rely on Robert Lyman, a former public servant of 27 years, 10 years a diplomat, who provided nonpartisan advice to governments at a time when experts were helping the government, not activists. And then demand that your local media report on the facts and ask the hardball questions of all politicians and all environmental groups. After all, it's your money, your jobs, and your environment they're toying with. You will be left behind and hurting if you don't speak up now. For Friends of Science Society, I'm Michelle Sterling.